Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again with a last little update for Penance Brand Ignite and then an introduction of Rage Vortex Berserker. As for the Penance Brand, basically not much change from the last video where wasn't too sure about its mapping sort of potential thing, and it's okay. Like, as you can kind of see, especially with the Gloom Shrine, feels pretty good. But the mapping overall wasn't great. It was okay, but nothing too special with that extra brand chain thing. It just kind of sometimes felt good, but then on thicker content it felt bad, and then ultimately the character was like paper thin because I tried to build as much Ignite as possible, and in the end basically just felt okay as a boss sort of killing machine. But even then, nothing too special, because the high roll damage was pretty high, possibly the most Ignite damage I've had in a long time, but it's also pretty inconsistent, and that leaves you feeling a little bit weird at times. So if you get the right procs, the right convergence, your exposure up, and your high roll, your fire damage over your chaos, all that sort of shit with the Penance brand, and then after the final like 3 seconds, whatever the fuck it takes to actually get the Penance brand off, it can hit like 20 million DPS. But more often than not, it's more like 5 to 10, probably more like 10. And then once again, as I said, you do have a very thin character, so you're just running around. I mean, it's an okay playstyle. Like, I took on all endgame content, 4 ways, feared, bosses, whatever the fuck, and it got it all done. But it didn't feel super satisfying compared to some other builds this league, and it just was inconsistent, and that's part of its lack of satisfaction, I think, where sometimes you would just feel really good, and yep, that proc went just the way it should have, and sometimes you'd be like, did it do anything? Why not? Oh, I guess I was missing something. So yeah, wasn't my favorite character to be put together and playstyle in the end. I tried out Divine Ire for Ignite Clear as well, and on most maps and stuff, Divine Ire for Clear felt better. But then it also made you more vulnerable in some other situations, and the Ignite potential was a lot lower in the end. So this is just the end of the Feared as well. Not much happened there. Basically, I had to graveyard Zerg 2 or 3 deaths and take 1 or 2 of the dudes down with me every time, since the Ignite damage was big enough. So in conclusion, kinda whatever, wasn't in love with the character or the Penance brand playstyle. And that introduces Void Forge Rage Vortex Zerker. Now, Rage Vortex has been fairly established for, a few leagues now as a pretty good skill, especially combined with Void Forge. And I thought it was about time I tried it out, and in this case, just going for as much rage as I can get as a berserker, so 90 rage, and then using a Void Forge without an Omni, without Secrets of Suffering, so pretty just basic sort of setup that's also trying to utilize some low life action. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Rage Vortex, basically it shoots out this big spinning vortex of rage that is based off of your rage total, and then costs rage, and then typically the really big thing in the build to fix is how you're going to generate a shit ton of rage consistently. Now, you may be able to notice that you can only really have one rage vortex out at a time, and it spins forward and kind of stops once it starts hitting some enemies. So it does create for a bit of an awkward playstyle as just a solo skill. If, for example, you are getting very overwhelmed doing double beyond and getting breach mobs and all that sort of stuff, it's pretty tough to keep up with the demand of all of the things coming at you, so you do kind of need some assist skill or some sort of bigger rage generation so you can spam more. So currently, as you can see, like a lot of the time just throwing out a rage vortex, and it's really big area because we've got a little bit of area in the build with just pulverize and void forge, and then it scales off of rage as well. You throw out one and then just kind of AFK and wait till things die, or until you have a good chance to throw out the next one. If you keep throwing out too many rage vortexes, you lose too much rage, and then you're throwing out piddly rage vortexes. Since in the build we have Chainbreaker, and that just gives me rage per second, and I've probably at like 15, 20 rage per second or something. You got to still wait a bit for it to build up. So as you can see on this type of a map or bridge setup, you're just getting overwhelmed a bit. You can't do too many rage vortexes. And then I've got Ancestral War Chief to help me out for clear as well. It's been pretty good and pretty fun so far. Like, you can use a secondary skill and have something like Spectral Helix or Blade Storm, and then have Rage Vortex as more of a secondary setup. But I'm just using it as a primary and having War Chief totems help out, and the DPS on this thing potential with Voidforge seems to be limitless. Like I said, no Secrets of Suffering, not using Omniscience, and I think we're going to be at like 20-30 million DPS and just shitting on the entire game pretty comfortably. Like, it's been fun thus far. And then if you do use some of those pretty fancy tools like Omniscience and Secrets of Suffering, then I don't know, I imagine you're going 100 million DPS on this thing. It definitely is a powerful skill with some challenges to overcome. So once you overcome those challenges and those problems, it becomes a fairly large build, as far as I can tell anyway. I've yet to do too much content like high level 80s and just been leveling and putting the character together, but every single time I play with Voidforge, it's, as always, incredibly powerful, and there can be very powerful ways of building into Voidforge that I usually don't utilize, like the Forbidden Shaco, like I said, Omniscience, and also Secrets of Suffering, and Berserker usually pairs very well with it just because you can go infinite on damage. In this case though, just picked Berserker because I wanted to max out the Rage, and since I had no idea how Rage Vortex really functioned or worked, I wanted to start off on the best possible foot for rage generation and for the overall playstyle of the skill. It's a bit clumsy at times, just with the amount that you need to, wait for your rage and throw out one single attack and all that. But then, as you can tell, on lower level demand of mobs, just like Delve for example, you can just throw out one vortex and it cleans everything up, and you don't really need any more skills or any more vortexes, and you don't feel like you're lacking in your skill usage at all. My initial plan was to be more of a Blade Storm main and then use Rage Vortex as kind of a secondary, but in this setup it's just way too hard to fit in any more gem sockets, so auras, few totems, and the main skill is what I'm going with, and I think it should crush some serious ass in the end. But so far, so good. Still got a bit to go to finish building the character, and then take on some endgame. So, Rage Vortex, so far so good. Let me show you how I've built the character so far. There's a character level 87, Zerker, called Dyes of Abyssus. Dyes of Cringe, but I was going to use Abyssus and be a Zerker, and just assumed I'd be dying of that sort of shit. So far though, not really. It's been fine, and the character's built around Voidforge. So once again, if you're unfamiliar with how Voidforge works, it gives a pretty low amount of fizz to start with, and then 300% of your weapon fizz as extra damage of a random element. So basically what you need to do is just scale your flat fizz to be a bit of a higher amount so that the weapon doesn't suck anymore, and then you get huge extra elemental damage over the top of that, but you lose all of your initial fizz unless you're converting it as well. So if you convert some of your initial fizz, let's just say you convert 100%, then just about every hit is going to be 400% of weapon LE damage, which is pretty big, and as far as I can tell, as far as I'm concerned, Voidforge is always basically a guaranteed win for a build for me. Very big item, very underrated still. In any case, so in this case, we are trying to scale through some Bloodthirst, which gives us some flat fizz based off of being low life and stuff. Rage, which, with enough rage stacking gives you some really big numbers. And like I said, one of the better ways I can see stacking this shit at the moment is to do Forbidden Shaco. If you find the right one, divine it enough times, you can get like up to a level 35 rage, which would be absolutely ridiculous for the rage stacking, because then it gives you something like 200 to 400 additional fizz which is pretty big, but it does come at the cost of an Abyssus. Abyssus gives you 20 to 60 and then some melee multi as well. As well as that, it sacrifices an extra 5% of rage. So Rage Vortex itself, if you read the whole thing, a little bit confusing. You sacrifice 20% of your rage to create a create a rage storm. If you have at least 10 rage, and then this gives us another plus 5%. So basically, as you can tell, 90 rage up here, and if we attack one time, it goes down to 60. So it's sacrificing about 30 rage, and then it just pumps back up to 90 pretty quick because of the Chainbreaker keystone. Chainbreaker gives you 3 rage per second, and then the skill cost, all of your skills cost 3 rage base. And then, they do scale off of various supports used and all of that. So in this case, costs an additional 12 rage total at the moment. But then that 3 rage per second can be scaled with mana regen, and that's why our rage currently goes up at a pretty quick rate. Because I've done as much as I can to kind of scale some mana regen. So I've got a big mana regen ring here, big mana regen ring here. Started out with a mana regen base, and then crafted something nice, and then crafted mana regen over the top of it. So with all of that, quite a bit of mana regen, and also there's a point over here for mana regen. And as well as that, I may end up kind of reshuffling the tree to go a large cluster jewel that will then get a few medium mana regen passives as well. I'm still figuring that part out, whether I'm going to do it or not. Haven't even actually done the Uber Lab for 40% more damage, which I will eventually. But, up to everything I've done so far, I've got like fucking 20 mil in DPS. Don't really need that 40% more. So not yet, anyway. Still figuring out the min-max of the build. But so far, I've got Rage Vortex, Trinity, Rage Support, Pulverize, Bloodthirst, and Ellie damage with attacks. And then I'm going to have like a 6-link totem set up, because the totems in the end are going to do, maybe like half my damage or something. We got War Chief, Multi-Totem, Protector, and Multi-Strike at the moment. Probably going to have Ellie Pen once I get the right gem or the right int. And then maybe an Ellie damage with attacks or a Fizz damage, something like that. Grab some gloves. It's got conversion, crit, temple type gloves. Finish them off with a suffix cannot change and a veil. Got some rage on there as well, just so I'm making sure that my attacks are generating me extra rage as often as possible. And then some conversion against bosses. Bear's Girdle, just 20 extra rage, pretty much. Boots I'm still meaning to replace, but I do want Brittle on the boots. I then made a chest by doing some Pristine and Aetheric spam to lock in the prefixes, and then prefix cannot change with an attack reroll. Got the attack crit until I was happy that I got something else with it, resist. And then there it is, because we want the additional curse so that I can have Ellie weakness, and then also mark on hit with Assassin Mark. And then Petrified Blood, Precision, Determination. Still figuring out kind of the auras, but that's what it is at the moment. I shouldn't have Herald of Ash in the end. It's mostly there for aesthetics at the moment. And then Herald of Purity will be the play. As well as that, we can possibly fit in Hatred instead. But we'll have to wait and see what I end up with. But on my life at the moment is Vitality, Blood and Sand, Dread Banner, and Arrogance. Character can end up hitting some pretty nutty armor numbers. Nothing too special yet, but we'll see how thick I need to end up being with basically what I end up doing. But that's the character so far. Nothing too crazy to really point out. I do have a Thread of Hope over here that grabs Panopticon and Rampart, a few other things. Otherwise, nice Fizz melee tree, getting some auras and shit. My Lethal Pride over here just does Chainbreaker and Intimidate and some Leech. That's pretty much it. And it's a Zerker, of course. For now, that's all I got for you. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.